Are you drowning in all this hype around AI, but you're still waiting to see real tangible results and real value? In today's episode, we're going to cut through the noise and we're going to talk about how businesses just like yours are using AI in the real world to save time, increase profitability, and leave competitors in the dust. I have a super guest for you today. That's coming next.
Welcome to The AI-Powered Business Leader. This is the show that helps business leaders excel in the rapidly evolving environment of AI integration and implementation. We go beyond the hype to provide practical solutions for real businesses. Whether you're facing challenges like developing a clear AI strategy, upskilling your workforce, or ensuring data privacy and compliance, we've got you covered. Here is your host, Alastair McDermott.
And my guest today is a process improvement consultant who focuses on AI automations. She has over 25 years of experience driving multi-million-dollar improvements, and she is the founder of BrightLogic. Heidi Araya, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here today.
So the thing that I think is most important to anybody considering spending time or money on implementing AI is, where is the value? And I'm seeing people talking about them not finding value in AI, which personally I think is crazy. Like, I see value everywhere, but I'm just wondering, do you have any insight as to why people are finding it difficult to find value in AI?
Well, simply put, I think they start thinking about AI as the tool they must use instead of starting with the use case and what are they struggling with today? Why would they even adopt AI? Is it even an appropriate solution there? So I think there's lack of understanding about how they should be adopting AI and what it really means. It's such a broad topic that means so many things that just, AI to everybody today is just ChatGPT. And so it's natural that not only they don't know what to put in the little box, but it might seem limiting to them because maybe it can't take care of the biggest business challenges that they have today, which might not even be related to anything that ChatGPT can help with.
Yeah, so maybe part of it is kind of people putting the cart before the horse. They're looking at the tool and seeing how can I make this work with my business, but they're not looking at their business and saying, what problems do I have that I might be able to solve with AI, right?
Yes. And in my 25 years of process improvement experience, it's not this is not a new use case, right? It's like the latest fad comes on, whether it's Six Sigma or Agile or Lean or AI now. It's like whatever it is, everyone is jumping on it and they're missing the point because it's like all about adopting AI instead of thinking about how their business can leverage that.
So where is the place to start then? Can you just talk me through how you think about this when you're looking at a business and you're talking to a business owner?
Yeah.
Like, where do you start with this?
So first of all, I asked them what makes you groan. You wake up in the morning, you're ready to start your day. What makes you groan? It's a particular process or a particular pain or challenge that you're suffering, and they always have an answer to that. Like, the biggest challenge in my business is this particular thing. It's a process. It's something that they're struggling with, and it could be lack of leads. It could be a particular part of the process that they have that's very manual, but they always know what that is. And then with that, you can start to look at how AI could help in that process. I can give you one example. So a handyman came up to me after I went to a Chamber of Commerce event and said, I think I need some process improvement, and I could really use your help. And so we walked through his workflow of how he gets customer intake, which are all inbound leads, and then how he sends his folks on the job and then finishes the job and then goes through that whole workflow. It was many, many steps across many different platforms because the inbound leads are coming on many, many different platforms, texts, emails, Facebook and Nextdoor and all those things. And he has to figure out how he can respond to them in a way that's human and timely. And so we discovered while running through his process, I actually pointed out which parts of the process that could be automated. And it turned out that 75% of his process could be automated. At the end, he decided that he didn't want all of it automated. He really wanted to keep a very personal touch as well. So we opted to start with some voice agent for him. So it's basically an AI receptionist that takes calls when he's not available. And we're going to be building on that solution by adding one automation that puts all of those inbound messages into one place so he can see easily what stage of the process they're in. So it's things like that you really have to talk to someone to figure out what is the struggle that they have today, and where AI can fit in. And even if AI could fit in somewhere, you can opt to say, I don't want AI here because I really want to reach back out to the owner in person and ask them how the job went. Of course, AI can do that, but we don't want to do that in that case, right?
Yeah, so really fascinating. And so the question then that I'd have is, just about this specific example, is this not overkill to use AI for something like a business of that size? Um, I'm just wondering about like the appropriateness of AI solutions, and maybe there's something off the shelf that you could have used instead. I'm interested in that because I think that's a question people struggle with. Like maybe there's something out there already.
Yeah, so great question. So he has 6 people working for him. So he is, a smallish business, but still, it's not just him. And we actually, that was one of the things that I told him. Couldn't you just have people fill out a form? Couldn't you actually, there's something called House Call Pro. You can use House Call Pro. So I actually told him about these things and said, I just want to make sure that you think you're going down the right direction. And for his business personally, he said, Heidi, I want it to be a very personal touch. If I have them fill out a form, they're just going to say like, oh, I received this thing and you're telling me to fill out a form. How boring is that? And they're not going to do it. They're not going to upload the photos. And the other choice with the House Call Pro was it really didn't have a personal touch either. And it was about deploying staff to job sites instead of really integrating and having a personal touch. And so you might think it's ironic, but he felt the AI would bring that personal touch. He gets an inbound call, the AI responds and asks them about the job. Say, I've got 20 cracked tiles on my back porch I need to fix. And then the AI will say, tell me more about the tiles, what location or how many tiles, whatever. So it asks for more details about the job, and then it asks them to send photos to his text or email. And then by the time he gets the voice transcript and looks at his email, he's already got the photos there, and he can just give them an estimate back. Whereas before, he was just waiting till the end of the day at 9 p.m. when the leads could have gone somewhere else because they haven't heard from him. So he's able to respond more quickly, but he thought it was the more personal touch instead of going with the other solutions that I presented him with.
That's genius. I love that. And I do know from sales in that kind of scenario that the speed of response time makes a huge difference in closing sales. So actually getting back to somebody very quickly like that is very effective. So that's genius. And it's interesting, because I think people think of AI as bringing us into a world where things are less personal, but yet we're able to do things with AI where we're almost able to clone ourselves. And I know that kind of freaks people out as well. This idea of, well, you're replacing me, or I'm talking to a robot of you, and I don't want to do that. But there are scenarios where if you're transparent and say, hey, look, this isn't the real me, but this is an avatar of me that's able to help you with a lot of this stuff, and will speed up our interaction. How do you think about this?
Yes, absolutely. So I already have clients who are using that. They have already done their AI avatar or duplicated themselves, or they have this knowledge base. So I have one client who is a train the trainer. And when I got on a call with him, he said, Heidi, look at this. I spend from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. I get text messages, I get phone calls because my new trainers have to go and run these activities and workshops in their own organizations, and they're struggling to remember what it was that we covered or how to do this. They have a question, and so they text me, they call me. And he said, Heidi, what if I could share my knowledge with this? I told him, I think I have a solution for you. We can build a chatbot, and people can sit in there and they can chat with the chatbot, get the response as though they were talking to you. Of course, he has this big knowledge base he's been building up for the past 20 years. And then I told him about another client I had who was building this voice agent for her knowledge base. And he said, Heidi, I think I want that. I want they can call 911 emergency. So they step out of the workshop like, oh my gosh, this is coming up. And they call 911. They're like, hi, how do I run this workshop? And the AI gives them the answer. And now he won't have to spend from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day answering questions that to him are repetitive, maybe, but to each client, it's a different question, right? It's the first time they've done it. And this is a perfect use case to scale your business. So now he'll be able to focus on more time with his family, hopefully, take a day off here and there, not be glued to his phone for so long.
Yeah, and this is one of the places where I like to tell people to start is, what is the stuff that you tell people over and over again? And a great place to find this particularly is your email sent items, your outbox, and stuff that you've sent, answers that you've sent in emails to people, be it your colleagues or clients or people like that. There's usually, like, if you have been in business, like I've been in business 18 years, I have 18 years worth of email in my outbox, and a lot of that is rubbish, but a lot of it is actually good and useful, and could be really useful in building out some of this kind of experience, this kind of chatbot or something where it's able to answer questions. I think that's genius. So I think this is one of the places where AI is really helpful, because what it's able to do is it's able to help us scale, because we get to a point where there's only so much time that we have, and it enables us to deal with multiple inquiries. Like for me, the one that's a big deal is I used to spend hours, possibly days, writing proposals when people
Yeah.
would contact me about projects, and I'd easily spend half a day to a full day writing a proposal document. Like no problem it would be, because they would all be very custom projects. Whereas now I'm typically able to write that in maybe 2 hours, or maybe an hour and a half, maybe even an hour, depending on the scope of the project. And that's because I do things like record my sales calls with the permission of the of the client, and
Yep.
process those with AI.
Yep.
Is that something that you do yourself? Is that something that you've helped people to do?
I do actually. So I have a lot of coaches and consultants, solopreneurs as clients. And so one of the things I tell them is, if you're a coach and you, of course, with your client permission, you have AI sit on your calls, you can have it analyze your coaching style and your call, and maybe it will uncover something that you haven't yet tried with this particular client. Maybe they're struggling. You could have it analyze and give you feedback on sales calls. So I just had this use case yesterday, because I had a client I had met with a few times, and we were trying to get to the next level where he's going to purchase my AI sales representative. And I uploaded the content, and I started asking it structured questions around what are the objections that he might have, what are the concerns that he might have, and I went through like 3 or 4 say iterations of conversation with it. And then by the end, it told me his main concern was that he has invested a lot in previous situations and scenarios for AI, because he's an early adopter, and they never panned out. And this might be one big concern. I do remember that he said that, but by the end of our call, I asked him, "Are there any other concerns that you have that still remain? I know we've spoken now, a few times." And he said, "Yes, I have 3." And he listed one of that with the top one. "I've invested so much, and they make big promises, and it never comes true. Like, the tech is not there yet. So I see this fancy demo." And I said, "Well, let me explain this AI, sales development rep that I'm doing." And I explained it, and I said, "Well, the bottom line is, this is not new tech. It's been around for a year. And so we've done this hundreds of times already." And I explained it in a way, and he said, "Well, actually, you've also not oversold me on it. Like, every time I say, 'Hey, why don't we just get rid of all the people?' You say, 'Oh, no, no, no.' Their job will change, and here's what you need to consider." And so he said, "You've actually been on the very cautious side to just tell me what I need to do and what to expect." But that went well, because I had AI help me through that process. So I told him, like, "I'm new to sales, but anyway, AI can help me and understand, what the concerns that you might have." So I do think that contributed to an excellent sales call.
I think that this is a bigger issue that maybe we need to accept, or come to terms with, which is that there is a huge value in recording our meetings and recording our calls, because we can do so much with that when we process those with AI. But at the same time, people don't really like the idea that, okay, every work call I'm going to do from now on is going to be recorded.
Yeah.
This is something I kind of think about and struggle with and talk to people about. How do you feel about this?
Yeah. It's for sure a trade-off, right? I know for me, in my use case, I speak with many, many different people and many clients. I couldn't possibly remember the conversations I've had week over week. When let me just do this, because this was me before, right? You're talking, and I'm looking down, and I'm like, "Hold on, I'm taking a note now. Oh, just hang on. Let me just write this down." And I saw a recording of myself, and I was looking down at least 60% of the time on that call. And I felt embarrassed for myself, because I wasn't able to pay attention. And the call probably went slower because I was trying to take manual notes still. So when I saw that recording, it was like an aha moment for you. Like, no, I also, even though I love my book and I still have it here, I just need to adopt this so I can truly focus in the meetings. I do think, and it's a legitimate concern that people have about privacy. And there was one tool whose name I won't mention that when you read the terms and conditions, it said they could train their AI on your calls. And I was like, no, so I'm not using that tool. But read the terms and conditions, make sure that the privacy policy is spelled out so that you know how your information will be used, both by the person recording it and the company who's recording that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that the whole privacy issue is complex. I've tried to simplify this by creating a privacy matrix. I blogged about this recently. I think that we can put AI into either one of two categories or one of three categories, which is private or non-private. Now, a friend of mine is a bit more cynical, and he said, "Well, there's absolutely private, and then there's private where they say it's private."
Yeah.
And those may be two different things depending on whether you trust the company or not who's providing the AI. So this is where it gets difficult. I think sometimes you have to make judgment calls about, well, do I trust the company? Like, for example, Facebook don't really have a great reputation when it comes to caring about end users and the consequences of their business actions. So do I trust the AI that Facebook runs that says that it's private, for example? And even if it's in their terms and conditions, well, what does that mean? So I think there's judgment calls still, but we can try and make these things a little bit easier by saying, well, there's private AI, there's non-private AI, and then there's sensitive information and there's non-sensitive information. So sensitive information, you got to be extra careful with it, like somebody's medical records or company confidential information. And then there's stuff that isn't so important.
I agree.
So I think when we think about those things and are aware of those things, that it can make it a little bit easier. But I think you're right. I think that the idea of having everything recorded, it's a concern for some people. But it's how we get the most value. In my opinion, it's how we get the most value out of AI, is because we're feeding data to the machine. We're giving it stuff to work with. We're giving it, and what we're doing is we're giving it unstructured data, which is all our conversations, and then it's able to give us back to us in this structured format, which makes it really useful. And I think that's something that we have to come to terms with it a bit as well.
I think so as well. I also think there might be the rise of edge, like AI on the edge devices, or I'll have AI running on my laptop, so it's not going up to the cloud, so there'll be less of a chance of it getting out if I don't want it or being misused. So it's still not quite there yet, but that is also happening. And so I think more and more people may opt for just a local AI on their machines.
Yeah, and that's one of the ones I was talking about when I say there's private and then there's truly private. When you're running it locally like that, it's truly private because it's running locally. The only thing I've noticed is people are going to get a bit of a shock if they're running AI on their phone, for example, how quickly your battery will burn through. When you start running stuff, it's amazing.
Right.
So we don't really experience just how much power this is using because we're typing it into ChatGPT and it comes back in half a second. Google has just bought like 5 nuclear power stations to power this stuff. Like this is a big deal. And every time I put something into AI, it's also in the back of my mind, the amount of energy that this is using, me checking this recipe, I wonder sometimes, and I do think about that. I think it's just something we have to, again, come to terms with and figure out. But I want to come back to what we originally talked about, which is examples of practical use cases in business. I'd love you to take us through a couple more examples that you've seen or that you've helped people implement, because I think when people hear about specific use cases, that's when their eyes light up and they say, "Oh yeah, that's how it could be useful for me."
Yeah. One of the most popular use cases is really for sales and marketing. I have a client that I'm working with, a creative agency, and they do research for their clients. They spend 35 hours on customer research. So a new customer comes to them and they have to do market research. 35 hours. They're not leveraging AI at all. That is something that AI could go out and perform the research, come back and actually send you a draft report. Of course, you have to look at it, edit it, but it might take from 35 hours down to 4 hours, for example. So that's one common use case that it's a great one, but people aren't really leveraging as much as they could do. All the amount of research that AI can just do these days. Even a simple perplexity search will do a lot for those simple research use cases without having to use complex queries or agents. The other one is Sales is going to be changing dramatically. If you're in the sales business, sales people spend a lot of time prospecting manually, making cold calls, nurturing customers. Well, they don't often have time to do that, but the statistic is something like salespeople spend only 28% of their time actually selling. The rest of it is doing all the other things around it. I know from sales in my own business, I go to an event, or this morning I met with somebody. I've got to add them to my CRM and I've got to keep them updated. And then, oh, wait, they didn't reply. So I'd like every 3 days, I'm like, hey, are you, you mentioned this, you're still interested? Send some personal touch. Oh, send them something valuable in exchange because they did that. So all that stuff is manual. And those are things that AI can automate at scale in a very personalized way. So I do think that not only it's the top use case that people have approached me about in the past 6 months, but also that it is huge, the return on investment. So AI can make calls. They can revitalize in a dead leads database. You've got their contact information. All you need to do is reach out. So AI can do that. They can text. They can make calls. They can, assuming you got some permission from them, of course, you have to opt into some terms and conditions. They can message across various social networking and other platforms, and it can do a lot of things like qualify leads for you. By that time, they're going to be booking appointments, and then the people, you're not getting rid of people. They'll just be waiting to receive and close those calls. So that's one huge use case. I just think it's going to change the sales landscape dramatically. So when I spoke with the client, my client yesterday that I had the call, and he said, what do I need people for? Tell me how their jobs will change, because I already told them you're not getting rid of people necessarily. And I said, well, they'll have to look and manage the workflow, alter the workflow, check that the response is the one that you want. You still have to train it the same way you would want to train a human, but the scale at which the AI can operate is so much higher, like 1,800 calls per minute from the AI, and like similar scale of outbound messaging and texting and however you want to do the messaging, a person could never really compete with that.
Yeah, and I think that the question of what people do and how we think about jobs, I think that there's two fundamental approaches that you can take to this. And if we say, let's take, and I'm going to make the numbers very simple here, but if we say that you could have a business with 5 people, and they currently have 5 people, and you say, okay, well, everybody can be 5 times more productive. So what we can do is we can fire 4 people, and then one person can do the job of 5. And that's one approach, and you save the costing of 4 people. But the other approach is to say, well, if we make 5 people 5 times more productive, now we have 5 people doing the productivity of 25 people. And so you don't save the cost of 4 people, but you've got all this extra productivity. And what does that allow you to do? It allows you to do lots more. So I think it's like part of this is just going to be, what is the philosophy of leadership when in business? How do they want to approach this?
Yeah. And I do think that the majority of businesses who are that size, they need those humans, because you've got like the finance person, you've got the, whatever the person is, they have a very specific skill set that you couldn't get rid of it, because one person can't think about sales and finance and all the other things that they're supposed to be doing. So I think that's a lower risk in my mind. And that's why I prefer to work with smaller businesses, because I know that they're less likely to lay people off rather than huge corporations that I didn't want to work with for partly for that reason.
Yeah, and I have an upcoming guest on the show who I'm looking forward to having a chat with, because she built some AI automations that caused her to be laid off, along with 300 of her colleagues, including her boss and her boss's boss. So, so she was telling this story in our pre-chat. I'm really fascinated to have a chat with her about that. But yeah, like this can happen. I think we need to be very honest and open about these things as well. That this definitely will impact on jobs and the way that people work. But you can take a different approach to it. You can put people doing things that, like AI is really good at grunt work, at doing repetitive, horrible tasks. So let's get it to do all the grunt work and horrible tasks, and let the humans do the stuff that's fun to do. I think that's personally my philosophy for it. Let me ask you, are there any common mistakes that you're seeing people making when they're trying to implement AI?
Well, I think the first one is, first one is freezing, right? That's I'm not going to do anything because I don't even know how to start. So they just freeze and they don't use it at all. But the second one is, well, I'm just Googling really quickly and I came up with this AI for sales use case. And so I'm just going to buy that tool. And they don't really do due diligence on it. And because anyone now can put up a nice sounding website, a lot of people I know have been scammed when they bought something that it didn't actually do what as good as it said it would do, or even worse, right? They purchased something and they said it could do this, like close calls with clients, and then they come to implement it. They spent thousands of dollars and it can't actually do that. He's like, no, first you need this and you need this and you need this. So it's I think that's a danger. And I think the main thing is just to know the person that you're dealing with and think about the use cases that they have and just make sure that you're not getting into that yourself into that situation. And I always recommend people, if they aren't sure, to do a proof of concept first, so they're not spending a lot of money with somebody that they don't know, or maybe the person, if they haven't come recommended and trusted, then do a simple proof of concept first.
Yeah, that's good advice. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about briefly is the importance of understanding capabilities. And this is a moving target because AI capabilities are increasing all the time. How do you think about that when it comes to like non-technical business leadership? They're looking at this, trying to figure out, okay, this whole ChatGPT thing. I've got ChatGPT 3.5, which I used a year ago. It was terrible. AI isn't all that great, and then people are saying, no, it's really good. You got to try it out. The whole capabilities thing, I think, is a big mess. How do you think about this?
Yeah. So here's the thing: if you don't start, or you just try it once and you don't see the change, to you, you're just going to be thinking about ChatGPT 3.5, and you're like, I tried it a year ago and it sucked, and I don't want to use it again. I mean, when I tried it a year and a half ago, or whatever, however long it was then, or almost 2 years ago now, I thought, okay, it's not great, but you know what? It does save me a little bit of time, and I can see the potential, and I know it's going to get better because that's just how tech is. You know how it's going to evolve. So I had faith very early on that it was going to improve. But I know people who are stuck on that moment in time. They tried it in April of almost 2 years ago, and then they aren't trying. So the use cases with AI are changing and upgrading so frequently that if you're not keeping on the forefront for your little use case in your industry, you're going to miss the boat because other people are actually doing that. So one of the funny stories I have is about a year ago now, I was using HeyGen to create my own AI avatar. I worked really, really hard. I tried like 5, 6, 7, 10 times to create just the right video. And my AI avatar was not good. It had funny, voice. I looked weird, and my lips were weird. But and people laughed. And I said, you might laugh now, but a year from now, you won't be able to tell if it's really AI. So it's almost there now. I actually went to Synthesia. I created in just a couple of minutes with just a couple of a few sentences. I created an AI avatar myself, and I played it at an event. I had pre-recorded it for that event, and I just hit play. And they're like, so, okay, yeah, okay, great. It's a recording of you saying, I'm really pleased to be here speaking in front of you today. And I said, well, that was AI. I created it in, about 10 minutes this morning. And they were like, no way, I didn't realize that was AI. So, I mean, it's not perfect yet, but it's just if I hadn't tried it really for a year, but I knew it. I had seen other people try it. So I knew it was good. But that's the way you have to do it. You have to keep trying, because very, very soon it's going to hit that where for your particular use case, it's going to hit the moment where you're like, yes, this works. And you don't want to miss the boat.
This is something that people talk about, and I see it. I see a little bit of that overhyped. If you don't start using AI, your business is going to be in trouble because everybody else is going to use it. I think that's overplayed a bit, but at the same time, I think there's an element of truth in that message as well. What's your take on this?
It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, or even next year, but 3 years from now, they will wish that they had taken more action and kept on the forefront of it. I do believe that for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's a good place to leave it. Heidi, you actually help people to build those AI sales assistants that you talked about. Can you just briefly tell me about that?
Yeah, of course. So I have an AI sales rep that will do a lot of those things and help the human salespeople spend more of their time actually selling. Take on the tasks of making outbound calls, receiving inbound calls, sending DMs, messages, texts, and nurturing your clients until they're ready for the next step. So, yeah, if someone is interested in that, then just reach out.
Awesome. And where can people find you?
You can find me at brightlogicgroup.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Or you can always message me at my phone. It's 407 403 3361.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I just want to mention that I have now released my new beginner's guide, which is called An Absolute Beginner's Guide to Using AI. And you can get that at aipowered.biz/guide. So if you are a beginner and you're a bit overwhelmed or intimidated by AI, you can go check that out. It's for absolute beginners. You don't need to be a tech expert. Heidi Araya, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your